And it is 7, so whenever you are ready.
There we go. Thank you. All right, 7 o'clock. Call the meeting to order. Good evening, everybody. Has everyone had a chance to take a look at the minutes from October 5th?
Yes,
Anyone have any changes or suggestions they'd like to make?
I saw one tiny typo. It's on line 126. It says state and it should have said stated.
Anybody else?
No.
All right, then would somebody like to make a motion to approve the minutes as amended?
So moved.
And is there a second?
Second,
Zulik,
I'm gonna abstain. I was absent.
Farrington,
Yes.
Upton,
yes,
Smith.
Yes. All right, next up, the minutes from October 26th. Same thing. Any edits, questions, comments?
I thought they were great.
Is there a motion to approve the minutes as written?
So moved.
And a second?
second,
Thank you. Melissa?
Zulik,
Yes.
Farrington,
Yes.
Smith. Oh, Upton, sorry.
yes,
Smith.
Yes. Okay. First up tonight is 78 Main Street. In accordance with the Wetlands Protection Act, Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 131, Section 40, and the Southborough Wetlands Bylaw, the Southborough Conservation Commission will conduct a public hearing on Thursday, November 16th, 2023 at 7:00 p.m. via a virtual Zoom meeting. The commission will consider a notice of intent for a project located at 78 Main Street, map 58, lot 18, for the applicant Peter Bauer. The project description is to construct a detached two-car garage within the FEMA floodplain. And Mrs. Bauer, good evening. Thank you for joining us.
okay,
And are you here by yourself, or do you have a representative with you also?
Yes, I'm also present. I'm the architect of record.
Thank you very much.
Basically.
Would you like to give us a quick overview?
Sure. So the property located at 78 Main Street, as you mentioned, it's a corner lot at Main Street and Parkerville. And they are looking to create a detached structure for parking. And the structure, the location for it based on the topography and how the lot kind of lays out with septic and everything like that. The only location that really makes sense is over on the driveway side. And with the footprint, it sits like 575 square feet of the 712 square foot footprint sits inside of the FEMA 100-year boundary line. It sits just over 3 feet above the delineated FEMA level. So the FEMA level has it at like an elevation of 260 feet, and the slab level for the garage will be at like 263 feet. So, but because it sits inside of that designated 100-year flood area, we needed to present in front of the board for your guys to provide feedback and those types of things.
Thank you very much. Melissa, do I recall that, Lucas has taken a look at it, and yeah, I see one of their comments was determine how flood storage volume was calculated. I looked over the plan quickly, and I see there's a little trouble with how it was put together. Have you already had contact with Lucas about this?
No, I got the letter from Lucas, I believe it was yesterday or the day before. So
Okay.
I haven't had an opportunity to speak with them at all about it.
Okay, yeah, I haven't seen their letter either. I'll just run through it just really quickly. I'm sure they said the same thing, but in compensating for lost flood storage volume, it has to be matched by flood stage, and that is within each 1 foot horizontal slice within which filling takes place. Similar lost volume within that 1 foot slice has to be proposed elsewhere, and typically the in addition to a plan, this is also, it's generally included on the plan, just a table showing you like, oh geez, I'm trying to remember the 259.3, I think was the where the fill started at the corner of the garage. So you'd start with a slice of 259.3 up to 260. How much filling took place within there and how much compensatory volume you're providing elsewhere. Then for the next slice, 260 to 261, similar. And you just have a table. It's only going to have 3 or 4 rows in your case. It's a pretty easy one. It's a lot of people get tripped up on this, but I think the fix is pretty easy.
Okay.
And I think it'll actually push the compensatory flood storage area even further away from the most used part of the property. I think it'll end up being sort of a more attractive from a landscaping perspective as you go through this. Does that make sense at all? Did I explain that right?
I think it makes sense.
Okay.
And we part of I guess the what got a little bit tricky was the surveyor who originally did the plot plan and information for us did not look into the FEMA portion. And so we found this out like, 7 days or 8 days before trying to file to get in front of you. So we could certainly get any of that information put in for the construction portion of it.
Great. Yeah, I mean, it's the actual design of the compensatory flood storage is going to have to be, the design will have to be achieved before we can actually act on the application. We can't, this is something a little bit beyond our ability to condition in an approval. We actually have to see the plan and the numbers supporting it in order to do that. With that said, Joe, would you like to go through comments really quickly?
Sure. I'll start with the what you had just stated, which is my comment number 2, almost word for word.
Okay.
So, I also noted in that comment that a description of how the compensatory or the area being lost might be appropriate, because it looked like to me that they were counting the soil that was being excavated under the proposed garage as part of the volume that's being lost for flood volume. And if that's the case, then the actual flood volume that they would need to replace is probably substantially smaller. But just some clarification on that, if that was the way that was done or not. I also noted that there are some wetlands present across Main Street and across Parkerville Road. There's a BVW across Main Street, intermittent stream across Parkerville Road. These were not delineated in the field, but they were, the buffer zones were approximated off the DEP GIS. And in this case, I think the GIS was pretty close because they're pretty well-defined boundaries. So I don't know if the commission feels that those would need to be delineated, or if it's sufficient to use the estimated buffer zones in this case. Also, the noted on the site plan that the buffer zone, there should be a buffer zone drawn from the bordering land subject to flooding, the FEMA flood line. That was not on the plan, should be added. And also with regard to the limit of the FEMA flood line, it's a zone AE, which I think you noted that has a elevation calculated. And it looks like the line on the plan was actually scaled and not based on site topo. So it should be based on the site topo. And And there were a few administrative items, just some missing information on the forms or missing forms. I don't know if you want me to go through those in detail, but I think some of those should be provided also.
Okay, thank you, Joe. Do we have any questions, comments, concerns from members of the commission? Okay, and I haven't looked at the audience. Do we have anyone from the public here this evening who wishes to speak on this project? If so, please use the raise hand function and we'll promote you right up. I'm not seeing anyone. So it sounds like a couple of things needed to be added to the plan. Revision on the flood storage volume and a table just showing the lost volume and compensatory volumes. The revision of the FEMA zone line. The line there, it's pretty close. It falls between the appropriate two contours. I get what Joe was saying in a zone AE. You actually have a fixed elevation to work from, and that 260.4, you can add a 260.4 contour to the plan, and that will be an exact delineation of the floodplain. The buffer zone to the flood zone, and then I guess I'll go to the commission with this. The BVW across the street, sort of adjacent to the 84 Main property, it's sort of my feeling that there's not a lot of guesswork about where that wetland is. It's a pretty hard edge right along the edge of the road, and so for my part, I feel comfortable just adding the buffer zone to what was shown on the GIS, because it's going to be so close to what a wetland scientist would put up. I don't see the need to, for the extra expense to get that put together. But if anyone, feels like they need that, they need to see that on the paper, please speak up. It doesn't seem like that. So a couple of things to get put on the plan. And like I said, unfortunately, the compensatory flood storage volume is something we can't simply condition in an approval. We need to have that information and have it reviewed before we can act. So,
and for that, would that involve a resubmission and reconvening again in the same setup like this?
Yeah, so one more meeting. Resubmit only the documents that get a revision. I know in Joe's letter he mentioned a couple of things missing from the application itself, a couple of forms. So those, and then a plan with the revisions that we've spoken about, and then it'll be another Zoom meeting 3 weeks from today. And I think this is not really a heavy lift to get put together for the next meeting. So I would suspect that it'll be a pretty quick meeting. We'll be able to review the calcs real quickly and issue an order of conditions.
Okay.
Okay. So we're looking at a continuance to our next meeting. When is that scheduled, Melissa?
December 7th.
Oh, okay, December 7th. Is there a motion to continue the hearing until December 7th?
So moved.
And a second?
Second?
Zulik,
Yes.
Barrington,
Yes.
Upton,
Yes.
Yes.
Great.
Okay.
Jason, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out and I can, connect you with Lucas if necessary, if we can't tag team it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Okay. Next up, Northborough Road gas main. In accordance with the Southborough Wetlands Bylaw, the Southborough Conservation Commission will conduct a public hearing on Thursday, November 16th, 2023 at 7:10 p.m. via a virtual Zoom meeting. The commission will consider a notice of intent for a project located on Northborough Road within the right-of-way for the applicant Eversource Energy. The project description is the installation of a gas main. And who do we have here this evening on behalf of Eversource?
Hello, my name is Paulina Saffron. I'm with SWCA. I'm here with Phil London with SWCA and Anna Huberty with Eversource. And I would like to share my screen if that's okay.
Go right ahead.
Does everybody see my
Yes.
my blue screen? So we are here representing Eversource Energy, who has submitted a notice of intent application for the gas main installation project. The proposed work includes the installation of approximately 600 linear feet of new gas main within the paved roadway layout of Northborough Road to improve system reliability and efficiency. Specifically, the project will span from the Marlborough-Southborough town line and extend to the driveway entrance of 155 Northborough Road. And the photo or the image on this screen, the red line shows the distance of the project route. This is part of a larger project that will extend from the town line into Marlborough. Eversource has filed an RDA with the Marlborough Conservation Commission and received a negative determination of applicability for that work. The proposed work is within the 100-foot buffer zone to bordering vegetated wetland and inland bank only. There are no other resource areas within the project route. The project, actually, this is the map of the project. So the project qualifies an exempt minor activity under the Wetlands Protection Act. However, a portion of the work is located within the locally regulated 20-foot no work zone buffer to wetland resources. So on the screen, I'm not sure if you could see my cursor, but the light green line right here, that's the 20-foot buffer. And then the entire project, that's the dark green line, that's the 100-foot buffer to these wetlands. So the pipeline will be installed using a conventional open trench and direct bury method. All work will be within the existing roadway layout, the paved surfaces, and this method will include excavating a trench about 2.5 feet wide and 4 feet deep, laying down the pipe, and then backfilling the trench. The trench will be backfilled and the area repaved at the end of each workday. For the proposed work, there will be approximately 1,500 square feet of temporary impacts within the 100-foot buffer zone within the existing paved roadway. No work is proposed within the adjacent wetlands, and all temporary buffer zone impacts will be restored to pre-project conditions. There will be no change in grade and no tree removal as part of the project. These are a few site photographs of the site. So the top left photo is of Northborough Road from the town line. The town line, you could see where the pavement changes. So the wetland 2 is on the left-hand side of the road where the orange cone is, and wetland 3 is on the right side of the road. Both are kind of at the toe of the slope. So the road kind of slopes down, and that's where the wetlands are. Bottom left photo is another view of Northborough Road facing the town line. So wetland 3 is now on the left-hand side. That's the bottom. Right there. The top right photo is about middle of the project area with wetland 3 on the right and wetland 3 on the right and wetland 2 on the left-hand side. And the bottom right photo down here is the eastern section of the road near the end of the project area. So during the duration of the project, best management practices will be applied. So erosion controls and catch basin inlet protections will be installed prior to commencement of work, and they will remain in place until all disturbed areas are stabilized. There will be no work beyond the erosion controls. There'll be no storage of fuels or overnight parking of vehicles within 100 feet of wetlands. If dewatering is necessary, it will be located greater than 100 feet from the stream bank or water body and outside of the wetlands. And just to mention again, all paved surfaces will be restored to pre-construction conditions. And in addition to all of that, SWCA will be performing weekly environmental compliance inspections throughout the duration of the project to monitor construction activities for compliance within jurisdictional areas, which is the entire project route. So This project is anticipated to commence in early 2024 and will take approximately 1 to 2 months to complete. Best management practices will be implemented for the duration of the project, and all work will be accessed and performed from the existing paved roadway layout. The project will fully comply with the wetland bylaw, and there will be no adverse impacts to the adjacent wetland resources or permanent alterations to the 20-foot no work zone. So Eversource is seeking an order of conditions and requesting a waiver pursuant of the wetlands bylaw and regulations. We have also received and reviewed the comment letter from the peer reviewer, Mr. Joseph Orzel, and Mr. Orzel does note that there are several flags missing in the field, but that what is indicated on the map appears to be appropriate based on the adjacent flags and topography. So he doesn't seem to think that's an issue. And then Mr. Orzel also recommends that the project be conditioned to require notification of the Southborough Conservation Commission if alternative construction techniques will be required when crossing the culvert. There is a culvert in the area, and Eversource agrees with this and can notify conservation if alternatives are needed. And that concludes our presentation. If anybody has any questions, I'm going to stop sharing my screen unless you want me to bring it back to the map. I'll stop sharing my screen.
The map may be helpful. We can leave that up for now. And
Sure.
Joe, would you like to just give us a very quick run through of your comments and responses there too?
Yeah, sure. I think most of my major comments were addressed relative to number one, the condition if alternative methods are required for going over that culvert. Number two was regarding the missing flags or mislabeled flags. Although they're missing, I did believe that the line as shown on the plan is appropriate based on existing topo and the remaining flags in the field. So I don't have any real issues with the delineation as shown on the plan. There was only one flag that I found that I thought was a little bit low, but it was in a location where it doesn't really affect the buffer zone where any work is proposed. And that was flag W379. So I don't know that needs to be adjusted at this point. Other than that, we concur that the project qualifies as a minor activity. And I think that pretty much covers my comments. Oh, I did have a note that there's an old silt fence remaining in the field, buried near the culvert, and would recommend that they remove that as they're installing the new erosion controls.
Okay. Thank you, Joe. Let's see. Any questions, comments, concerns from the commission? Okay. Let's see. Regarding the work within the 20-foot no touch, that of course will require a waiver. Generally we require some sort of mitigation to do that. In this case, we're talking about work that's going to be taking place within an area that's been previously degraded and frankly isn't going to be really altered in any way, post versus pre. So I think if we just keep up with our current practice, if we, Melissa, you can put together the language to mention that in the conditions that the waiver is granted because the area is previously degraded. I think that would be sufficient unless anyone wants to wordsmith that a little bit better than I can. Is Eversource okay with Joe's suggestion, which strikes me as a good one, that while you're there in the area, removing the old silt fence from the culvert area?
Let me defer to Anna on that one.
You're saying that while we're there, you would like us to remove that silt fence?
Apparently, it's not a huge extent of it, and it's right in the area of the culvert. Is that correct, Joe?
That is where I saw it, was in the area of the culvert. It's possible there's more that was not visible, but that was where I did see it.
Okay, let me check with my team, and I'll get back to you guys by tomorrow. I would say yes, but let me just verify with the team that that's okay.
Yeah, that's.
I do want to make a note that while I've been on the site, there has been work on that road for another project, I believe, because when we were out there delineating, there was a silt fence and erosion controls along both sides of the road. So I'm not sure. I know
Yeah,
it
that's-
wasn't Eversource that installed them, but
Yeah, that's the resurfacing project of Cedar Hill within Marlboro. I think what Joe's talking about is, it sounds like this would definitely predate that. Is that correct, Joe? There's some.
Yeah, it looked like it was pretty old silt fence. Yeah.
I mean, my concern is just, within the adjacency to the culvert. I think it's important to get it out of there just to preserve flow through the culvert to not cause trouble. And while Eversource is in the area, already putting out erosion controls. And that would be the icing on the cake for mitigation for work within the 20-foot no touch, I would say. And if I have the concurrence of the commission, I guess I would suggest that we put that as one of the conditions in an order of conditions.
I concur with that recommendation.
Thank you, Melinda. Oh, before I forget, if there's anyone here from the public tonight who wishes to speak on this, offer questions, comments, or concerns, please use the raise hand function, and we will we'll promote you right up. Not seeing anybody. Okay, any other questions or comments from the commission? All right, I think we're in a position to close the hearing. Just to let the project team know, typically we close the hearing, and then at the end of all of our hearings this evening, at the end of our meeting, we will vote to issue an order of conditions. So right now, I'm looking for a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Moved.
And is there a second?
Second, if I didn't get the first. Yeah.
Thanks. Melissa, if you could do the honors. Oh.
Zulik,
Yes.
Barrington,
Yes.
Upton,
Yes.
Smith.
Yes.
I was calling your name, so you didn't hear me.
Okay, so thank you very much. As I said, we'll vote on an order of conditions at the end of our meeting this evening. That's generally ready for you tomorrow. Is that correct, Melissa? Yeah, and then
Yep.
after the 10 days elapse, you're in business. Thank you.
Thank you guys.
thank you.
Okay, where are we here? 7:28. Okay, St. Mark's parking lot. In accordance with the provisions of the Southborough Stormwater and Erosion Control Bylaw, Southborough General Bylaw, Chapter 154, the Southborough Conservation Commission will hold a continued public hearing on Thursday, November 16, 2023 at 7:20 p.m. via virtual Zoom meeting. The commission will consider a stormwater management permit for a project located at 0 Marlborough Road, maps 53 and 54, lots 9 and 8. The project description is the redevelopment of an existing parking area of St. Mark's School to coincide with the new roadway layout and town improvements of St. Mark's Street. Good evening. Oh, you're on mute. Oh, there we go. We can't hear you for some reason.
Sorry, how about that?
Perfect.
Good. Good evening. My name is Anthony Cleves. I'm with Haley Ward, one of the designers for the project. I believe we also have a few other folks here from the ownership and design team on as well. So as we're continuation, happy to go through however you like to proceed. I don't want to take up too much of your time, but I can give you just a kind of brief overview from where we've gone since our last meeting.
Yeah, just stuff since the last meeting. It sounds like this is mostly focusing around the water quality and stormwater treatment. Maybe just
Yep.
a quick overview of the ground that's been covered there.
Sure. Yep. So it was a couple back and forth with Fuss and O'Neill. Essentially, so I guess I'll get right to the chase. We've satisfied all of their comments, stormwater and design wise. Outstanding comments are items that are kind of administrative discretions for the commission to consider. But essentially, we ended up adding a rain garden. I know one of our discussions was the back and forth on gravel being impervious or not, and some of that discussion. So we kind of not going to worry about that anymore. We added a rain garden to design for all of the new impervious surface that was on the design plans, to kind of address any concerns with that. And then since the first time we submitted the rain garden, there was some back and forth with Fuss and O'Neill, which resulted in enlarging the rain garden to accommodate more storage volume, which we've done that, and they've re-reviewed the plans and have no further design comments.
Great. Let's see, any questions or comments from the commission?
Yep.
Okay. And likewise from the public, any questions or comments, please use the raise hand function. We'll promote you up. And I'm not seeing any. All right, it looks like we're in a position to close the hearing. And as I just told the previous applicant, typically we'll close the hearing, and then at the end of our meeting tonight, we will go through and then vote on conditions. But anyhow, would somebody like to make a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved.
Thank you. And a second?
Second.
Second.
Thank you.
Sulik,
Yes.
Barrington,
Yes.
Upton,
Yes.
Smith.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you very much for coming in. The permit should be ready for you tomorrow morning. I'm guessing Melissa will probably email that out. Is that correct?
Yep.
Fantastic.
Okay, great. Well, thank you very much for your time. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Have a great night.
Thanks, you too.
Okay, 7:32, just in time for 250 Turnpike Road. In accordance with the provisions of the Southborough Stormwater and Erosion Control Bylaw, Southborough General Bylaw, Chapter 154, the Wetlands Protection Act, Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 131, Section 40, and the Southborough Wetlands Bylaw, the Southborough Conservation Commission will hold a continued public hearing on Thursday, November 16th, 2023 at 7:30 p.m. via a virtual Zoom meeting. The commission will consider a notice of intent and stormwater management permit for a project located at 250 Turnpike Road, map 27, lots 2A and 46. The project description is the construction of a contractor's yard building, addition of driveway access, and maintenance of previously existing stormwater areas. Good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. James Tatro from Azimuth Land Design here on behalf of FD 250 Turnpike LLC. And could I share my screen?
Please do.
Okay. Just going to quickly explain what were the last revisions to the plan. Are you looking at a whole bunch of text now? Yep.
Yes.
Okay. We had a couple of last comments from Mr. Orzel of Lucas Environmental and from Amy Bell of Fuss and O'Neill. And one of Joe's was in regard to the detention basin maintenance plan. Note number 2, we had said don't work in the basins between March 1st and June 1st to avoid displacing possible wood frogs, etc. And Joe suggested changing that to July 1st. That's now reflected on the plans. In regard to, I'm going to stay on this same sheet, but scroll down. Amy Bell noted that we once again had an inconsistency, sort of a typo, in the sizes of the 2 pipes out of the proposed infiltration structure. They are correctly shown here on sheet D4, but I'm going to jump up a sheet now, so get ready. On sheet G3, we had not had them correctly listed. And this also on the back on sheet G3 gets us to another comment from Joe, which was, which I had misunderstood previously. He was suggesting that we extend the erosion control barrier here behind the existing building from, I had it stopping just at the right at the end of the proposed access drive connection, and he suggested extending it further, just because folks will be working in that area, and who knows exactly what they might do. Everyone doesn't perform 100% as we'd wish. So we extended the erosion control barrier around the curve of the end of the existing parking. And Joe also had a comment asking or noting that we had not previously submitted the notice of intent checklist, which has now been submitted. So I think we've addressed all of the two peer reviewers' comments. I would just, and I'll let Joe hopefully attest to agreement. And I just note that in Amy Bell's review of Fuss and O'Neill, she noted, she had a very long comment which mounted to, in regard to the two existing detention basins, one of which we're not proposing to do any change at all of what goes to it, except to install a CDS unit to actually improve that discharge. And the other of which we would be making some change to what goes to it, but actually decreasing because of the action of the infiltration structure. That it's at the commission's discretion, if I could summarize it as quickly as possible, the commission's discretion to allow any change to what's to such a use. But I think again, in each case, we're making essentially no change and adding infiltration where there was none. So I hope that neither of those changes would be found objectionable, but I'll leave it to you. And I guess I would, of course, ask Joe to just attest that he agrees that those couple items have been dealt with.
Okay, thank you. And Joe, I will turn things over to you for a quick run through of your comments and the responses to them.
Yeah, I think all of my outstanding comments were addressed and appear to be adequately addressed. The only one remaining item, I just had added a new comment, just as a clarification, that the project narrative had stated that the applicant was not proposing any to alter any wetland resource areas or any resource areas. So as clarification, I had just noted that although no permanent alteration or loss of wetland resource area is proposed, there is approximately in total 7,100 square feet of temporary BBW alteration within those basins for maintenance. And those are resource areas which will be temporarily altered. So that was just a clarification. Otherwise, I think my comments were addressed.
Okay, thank you very much. Melissa, could you give us a quick summary of Fuss and O'Neill's concerns regarding the stormwater discharge to the adjacent detention basin?
Yes. So it's something that we kind of went back and forth quite a bit with the applicant, and essentially the final comment that remained was talking about some of the offsite basins and using them in the pre and post calculation for stormwater. And after kind of some discussion, it's like one of the reasons why you might not want to include them, as it's not something that the commission has reviewed for jurisdiction under wetland resource areas, if they're built to the standards, etc. But in this particular instance with this project, there is no change to the drainage watershed areas that are going to those offsite basins that they're utilizing. If there was a change in the watershed maps, then it might be a different, or the drainage areas, then it could be a different conversation. But in this instance, even though that they're utilized in the pre and post, there are no changes that would affect those areas. So if that's something that the commission is okay with, just having that as a finding as to the reason why that those are utilized in those calculations.
Okay, so just to make sure it's absolutely clear, the stormwater going to the adjacent basin, there is no change in stormwater flow rate going to it, and no change in stormwater water quality going to it. It effectively matches the existing condition before this work. Is that a correct statement?
Mr. Chairman, I would actually say that the water quality to both basins will actually be improved.
Okay, and the flow rate and volume is effectively the same as what it's seeing today.
Well, the flow rate in volume to the more westerly basin will be exactly the same.
Yep.
The flow rate in volume to the more easterly basin, the one closer to Parkerville, will actually be decreased because right now there's no infiltration of runoff, and we're gonna take some of the captured runoff on this lower parking area with the installation of the new building and infiltrate it. So there is a change, but we are, I think I would say, more closely adhering to the stormwater management standards in doing so.
Sure. Okay, so you know, I at least as one commissioner, I'd feel comfortable saying that there's the applicant has demonstrated that there will be no adverse impact to the structures, nor to wetlands present within them.
And just really quickly, one other thing I would just note is in the course of review by Fuss and O'Neill, we showed that the drainage system works either contemplating the existing basins or ignoring them.
Right.
Either way.
Okay, I'd like to open this up to the commission. Any questions, comments, concerns?
I had just one question on the drainage report at the very bottom of page 2. It looks like there's a dramatic increase in the peak flow, and I hope that's a typo. It looks like it was 12.12 previously, and then afterward, for a 25-year storm, it's 111.42.
Let me see. Hold on. I apologize for screen sharing while doing this, but I'm just going to jump as fast as I can. No, this wants to go very large. Just a second. Oh yeah, that's a yeah, that's 11.42. I'm sorry. Wow. In fact, I can confirm that for you in just a second. It's the 10-year storm reach 11. So if you'll bear with me just a few more seconds here, I'll get to that exact thing and I'll show you. Oh boy. Or the 25 years. Oh, I'm sorry. Oops.
There it is. 12. Oh, that's pre.
Yeah, sorry, I'm looking at the wrong one somehow. 25-year storm, reach 11 post. Okay. I apologize for doing this to you. Here's 25 post development. This is why sometimes screen sharing is not a great idea. Here it is, 11.42, reach 11, the 25-year storm. Sorry.
Okay, thank you. I was hoping. Yeah.
Anything else from the commission?
Just Kevin demonstrating he reads every page.
I got to the second page. At least.
Yeah.
Is there anybody here this evening from the public? Yep, I see a hand up already. Oh, back down. If there is somebody here from the public this evening who would like to speak, please use the raise hand function. Mr. Davis, it looks like you have a comment to offer. Can you promote him up, Melissa?
Yep, Mark, you should be able to unmute and speak.
Okay, I am here. I don't know that my video's on. I apologize. It's Mark Davis. I live at 13 Schuyler Drive. I'm not an immediate abutter, but I'm in the abutting neighborhood. I just wanted to make 3 comments, and I apologize if I'm going to be a little bit long, but I think there are 3 important comments. One, in the application and in the documentation, and I'm not sure, I recall the D5 was the plan number. There's a calculation based on presumed zoning, and they've listed the incorrect zoning. They've listed it as highway business. It's an industrial zone, and my concern is that any calculations that are based on the highway zone should be relooked at, because it clearly is the wrong zone. And there has been now a zoning board of appeals application. There has also been a application before the planning board, and with the engineer listening, that same error exists on those plans. I happened to check it tonight. I apologize for not being able to point out to the exact plan, but when you scroll through, I think you'll find it. My second point is that it was interesting to hear your opening comments, kind of listening very intently on what this notice of intent is regarding. But nowhere did I hear the change in use that's being proposed for the parking lot itself. In the application that is now before the ZBA, and in the application before the planning board, they are looking for a special permit to allow for a contractor's yard. Not a contractor's yard building. They're looking for a contractor's yard. And that applies to the entire parking lot. Secondly, they're also calling this a contractor's yard building. There's no definition of what that is. And frankly, I have no clue what that is. I go to the state building code, and I don't see it anywhere. So what is it? So it led me to going down the path. If we're relooking at the parking lot as a contractor's yard, what does that mean? And the state building code tells me that a contractor's yard is a parcel or a lot for storing construction equipment, building equipment, or building equipment or supplies. In other words, they're looking for the use of this building, not only to apply to this building, but to imply for all the parking areas that they don't use for the storage building. And let me, since they're not identifying who the 10 tenants are of this storage building, but they're linking them to uses within the mini storage, I'd like to just quickly go through 3 examples.
Sir, we're at the conservation.
Mr. Tatro, sorry, I'm the chair here. Mr. Davis.
Yes.
I do have to interrupt. Yeah, so we are the Conservation Commission, and
I understand.
our jurisdiction is limited to the Wetlands Protection Act, the stormwater, the Southborough Wetlands Bylaw, and the Southborough Stormwater Management Bylaw, and that's literally the extent of our jurisdiction.
And let,
We have no jurisdiction over zoning. We have no jurisdiction over planning and site plans. We have jurisdiction essentially on this parcel over drainage and wetlands.
okay, and I 100% understand that. I'm not speaking to zoning. I'm speaking to the drainage system. And let me just bear with me for a minute or two, and I think you'll see where I'm going with this. While a contractor yard may be permitted, it doesn't have any definitions attached to it. And let me give you 3 examples. A company called JJEM Landscaping decided that they wanted to rent some offices in the mini warehouse building. They wanted to store all their materials that they use to get clients that they don't have room. About a year later, they decide to rent one of these units because they don't have the room in their garages to get their equipment. The contractor's storage yard has no controls over what they can store outdoors. They could very well be cleaning their equipment at night. They could be well fueling their equipment during the day, and at night they're going to have greasing and other issues related to the use of their space. That directly impacts what could and can be draining directly into those storm drains. Number 2 tenant is related to the first. It's their wives. And JJEM wives have a pink porta potty business. It's an appropriate use. They rent out the units for their trade show supplies. And they want a unit in the building to display their pink potties. But they also come in with the site with used ones. They clean them. They show how pristine they are. And they deliver them to their customers. 3, the third tenant. The third tenant is a utility contractor. He wants to utilize the storage yard, and he wants to utilize that office. He suddenly gets the contract to put the gas line down Parkerville Road. What a marvelous location to put a contractor's yard. I happen to have worked for a water contractor, and I know exactly what they put in their contractor yards. He will store plastic piping. He will store equipment. He will store any surplus materials coming off the site. There will be rocks. There will be soil materials that he'll utilize to backfill his thing. That's what we're looking at on this thing. We're not looking at a parking lot drainage system that this was designed for in 1986. The proponent is completely changing the use of that parking lot to a contractor yard. Now, regardless of the 7 additional tenant areas, I won't make my point further. But what is the existing drainage system is now being exposed to all sorts of issues that a normal parking lot would not be. We're going to have piles of material that are going to reflect what's flowing into those catch basins. I applaud the Conservation Committee on what's going on 250 feet to the north, where we have a change of use from a restaurant to a car dealership. And I read through what Beals and Thomas is proposing for that site. Why wouldn't that be proposed for this site? And are we really not looking at the bigger picture? Let me get to my final point. I noticed in the flows, most of this drainage goes out to Route 9. My assumption is there's an old permit that Andy Lane got in 1986 to drain into the Worcester Turnpike drainage system, which goes downhill and hits that catch basin at the corner of Parkerville and Route 9. I've lived in town since 1984. I've experienced the traffic and the worst intersection at Parkerville Road and how dangerous that turn is. When Andy Lane and Eagles put in the detention basin, there was a dramatic change. It was a lot safer. It was easier to deal with. But about 2 years later, we had significant surcharges in that single catch basin. And I scratched my head driving by why that catch basin was surcharging. What is going on? Andy Lane was done. The parking lot was in place. Eagle was done. His parking lot and all of his uses was in place. Leaf Systems made no changes to those parking lots. Yet we've had a continued surcharge. When Parkerville Road was rebuilt, the state and the town agreed to double up the catch basin. It still doesn't work. There's too much flow coming into that catch basin. And as you well know, that catch basin goes right into the swale down below on the other side of Parkerville Road. That's where it drains directly into wetlands. I have called, when I was on the planning board years ago, I often called for developers not only to look at where their flows are going, but they also have a responsibility to make sure where they're going has the capacity to accept them.
Excuse me, Mr. Davis. Mr. Davis, I've got to interrupt. Yeah, we're going well outside the commission's jurisdiction here. The applicant has to ensure that flows crossing the property line of their property are less than or equal to in flow rate what they were prior to the project, and under our local bylaw that the flow volume similarly is less than or equal to what it was prior to construction.
Well,
that's the extent. Excuse me. We let you speak for quite a long time here, so I'm going to do a little speaking of my own. That's the extent of our jurisdiction here, and that's the extent of the applicant's responsibility. And we don't have the authority to require anything beyond that. All that we can say is that if there is a downstream drainage problem in existence right now, this project will not be worsening it, and that's the purpose of all the drainage engineering work.
Let me ask two questions. One, has anyone looked at the 1986 permit that A.G. Lane obtained to drain out under Route 9? And did the highway get the right amount of flows? Here's what I think changed. That the original calculations for the existing parking lot were based on an undeveloped sarsen stone. Now, you can tell me that the flows were the same then that they are now. And let me finish. I basically say that those flows are far higher in a very tight area and now flow directly to Route 9. I'm not sure his permit has the capacity to accept those flows, and no one in 40 years has checked.
This is an issue that you can take up with the Department of Public Works. However, the Conservation Commission has absolutely no jurisdiction over what's going on there as it pertains to this project, and the applicant has absolutely no responsibility to address that under the law. We can't simply make up law. We can't do that. You know, our hands are tied by the Wetlands Protection Act, our local wetlands bylaw, and our stormwater management bylaw. We can't exceed that. We also can't touch on matters of zoning, planning, and some of the other issues that you raised. I understand you have concerns about the project. It sounds like many of the concerns, this simply isn't the forum because we completely lack jurisdiction.
Then let me
your drainage concerns, which sound like very valid concerns, we are powerless to do anything about them.
Let me ask you.
You have to talk to the Department of Public Works about this. If there's a drainage problem within Route 9, or on Parkerville Road?
Let me ask my last question, which will tie it into exactly where your jurisdiction is. If this proponent is openly proposing to change the classification of this parking lot to a contractor yard, I'd like to have somebody, the board, explain it to me why he is not required to submit an updated stormwater management plan. One has not been on this site, done on this site in 40 years. This is a change in use that directly affects the drainage system. He no longer has a parking lot drainage system. He has an industrial drainage system exposed to everything you're protecting across the highway, and you're not protecting here. And all of this directly flows into the wetlands. I have grave concerns over that. And if you're not looking at it, then this guy has to march back in and amend his whole NOI, because what he's proposing to the town is totally different than what he's telling you.
Okay, let's address that one right there. First, there's a stormwater management plan within the notice of intent and the stormwater management permit application. Is that correct, Mr. Tatro?
That is correct.
Okay, I thought so. Secondly, the use of it as a contractor's yard does not somehow relieve the property owner and future tenants of compliance with the Wetlands Protection Act, as well as requirements even under federal law, under NIPDES, disposing of toxic materials into a drainage system. Now, we're not the future police here. We don't know what the tenants are going to be. However, we can say absolutely that they're required to follow the law, just as every other applicant that comes before us.
And Mr. Chairman, I would just note that we earlier in the discussion, we were noting how Mr. Farrington had pointed out a typographical error in the drainage report, which looked at, contrary to what the abutter is saying, looked at the flows to both Route 9 and Parkerville Road in the pre and post development conditions in the 2, 10, 25, and 100-year storms. The implication or explicit statement that somehow this is not being studied or being looked at is simply wrong.
Okay, the stormwater management plan submitted as part of the both the notice of intent and the stormwater management permit application addresses storage of materials on the site into the future. This is correct.
We did not address what because we cannot say what the uses of each particular unit would be. I would note that contrary to the abutter's assertion that somehow there are going to be large storage areas, there is about 60 feet from the face of each of these units to the limit of pavement. There's just enough area to reasonably have a fairly large truck with a trailer turn around and back up. There is not sufficient area on this site for any such storage as he seems to imagine.
Okay, are tenants going to be allowed to do external stockpiling of, he's mentioning crushed stone or earthen materials or anything of the type? Is this something that's going to be allowed by the owner?
The applicant's attorney is also on the line, Mr. Charvel, and I believe he would tell you no, because in fact, it would impede other unit owners from getting to their unit.
Okay.
Could I just ask a question?
Please.
Here? Then why are we adding in the permit applications an application for a contractor's yard? What does that refer to?
And can I speak to that really quickly?
Please, Melissa.
And James, if there's something incorrect, please correct me. I believe that the contractor's yard building is just going to be mostly a building with associated parking. And it was modeled after an existing contractor's yard building at 154, 156 Northborough Road, in which the planning board dictates the uses. They're very specific on that specific permit of what types of companies can be rentals or owners within those specific units. And once a unit is assigned, whether it's bought or rented, the building commissioner has to check off that the associated use for the person who is in that unit meets what the planning board has authorized the uses to be. In the one on Northborough Road, it's specified there's no outdoor storage. It might be something that carries over. And when, it can be comments that the commission issues to the planning board regarding those types of things, reminding about drainage and what can and can't go into those systems, which might include things like car washing or things like that. But if you looked at the 154, 156 Northborough Road, very similar and extensive restrictions on what the uses and rentals can be and where the storage areas are.
I would also just note quickly that I know this is sort of planning board commentary, but we did another facility just like this in another town. And in that other town, the contractor's yard use, that category in zoning, encompassed both a storage area and a building where there is no storage intended, such as this. So it's a contractor's yard building, and in category wise, it can be a contractor's yard use. I'm sorry for talking about.
Yeah, no, that has no relevance to our proceedings here this evening. We simply can't contemplate zoning matters, and if it's a use issue, Mr. Davis, that you're concerned about, you need to go to the ZBA. Play with the building inspector and talk to the zoning board of appeals about it. But this is the Conservation Commission. We're enforcing the Wetlands Protection Act, local wetlands bylaw, and stormwater management bylaw. At this point, I need to turn it over to the commission to see if anyone on the commission has questions, comments, or concerns that they would like to raise regarding the discussion that's taken place so far. Okay, I'm not seeing any. Mr. Davis, do you have any new information to share with the commission, ground that we have not yet covered?
No, I actually appreciate the opportunity to have spoken to you. And I raised the issues. I'm still concerned. And yes, I intend to be fully involved in the other proceedings. But I am concerned that we're not looking at the bigger picture here. And if those concerns are warranted, I'll be back and communicate directly with you. Again, I thank you.
Thank you very much. I see another hand up from Mr. Glazer.
Oh, can you hear me?
We can.
I'll keep this one real brief. Just a matter of, it's sort of a process question.
Certainly.
If indeed the zoning is incorrect, so for example, the prior, I'm not saying if he's right or wrong.
Yeah.
But if it was zoned incorrectly, would that require then the drainage calculations to be reperformed, or given whatever you're looking at, it really wouldn't matter?
We are completely zoning agnostic. It's what physically is going to be constructed on the ground, and the drainage calculations flow from there. No pun intended.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Any other members of the public here this evening who would like to speak on this project, to ask questions or raise concerns? I'm not seeing any. And nothing further from the commission. Okay, and Joe, Lucas's concerns have now been addressed. Correct statement?
That is correct.
Okay, and we have a clean bill of health from Fuss and O'Neill. We've covered the issue of the offsite drainage basins. If there are no further questions or comments from the commission, I'm looking for a motion first. Let's close out the stormwater management permit. Is there Melissa, can we do all three with one motion?
Yes.
Okay, so we,
Yeah, yes.
the notice of intent under the Wetlands Protection Act, the notice of intent under the Southborough Wetlands Bylaw, and the stormwater management permit application under our stormwater management bylaw. Is there a motion to close these three public hearings?
So
So
moved.
moved.
Thank you. And is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. So, as I've said to the earlier applicants this
Hold on,
evening.
Ben, can I do roll call? Sorry.
Oh, good God. Thank you, Melissa.
Zulik,
Yes.
Barrington,
Yes.
Upton,
Yes.
Smith.
Yes. Thank you.
Sorry, I didn't want it to get lost.
So at the end of our meeting tonight, we will deliberate and vote on conditions. And you should be receiving copies of the conditions tomorrow morning.
Yes.
And at which point the 10-day appeal period commences.
Yep. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a great evening.
As well.
Okay. Okay, we're now on to new and continued business. We have a request for a certificate of compliance at 1 Pine Hill Road for a stormwater management permit from 2022. I can't remember
Yes.
this one.
This is Harvard. This is the Harvard
Oh.
University, the book depository.
Of course.
So the work has been completed. They submitted their requests about a year ago with their as-built documents. Fuss and O'Neill did do reviews and gave it the clean bill of health. We were waiting for this summer to do some extra kind of reseeding and stabilization of a couple areas, you know, very minor, but things that should have been rectified. And then the last go round about a month ago, I realized there was still some silt fence left. They had just cut it flush with the ground instead of ripping it out. And a lot of that plastic netting from straw bottles was left over. So they have since removed that. There was some just kind of electrical conduit that was left. So all of that kind of debris has been picked up. Areas and slopes have been final stabilization, good grass growth. It's been mowed quite a few times now. So all is well. And I would recommend issuance of the COC.
Fantastic. Anything from the commission?
Yep.
All right, so motion to issue a certificate of compliance for 1 Pine Hill Road.
So moved.
And second,
Second.
thank you.
Zulik,
Yes.
Barrington,
Yes.
Upton,
Yes.
Smith.
Yes. Okay. Request for an administrative amendment at 5 Corderville Road.
Yes, so
What's
this
up?
was a revision, and I can share the plan if that makes it easier. Kind of a minor revision that came in this week. The changes are this turnaround right here is just slightly larger. It only came out to about here previously, so they've added this bump out. And then this porch area out front, they've also added to the plans. So just very minor, mostly architectural except for the driveway. So to compensate for that, I think 390 square feet that they're adding here, they have proposed kind of cold-deck unit with infiltration. They have designed it for 2 inches instead of the 1 inches of water for every, or for the roof drain, sorry. So they are taking the roof area, draining it through the gutter to the dry well, and it's sized for 2 inches of rain versus 1 to make up for the additional impervious surface. Sorry, my brain didn't quite work there.
And for the newer commissioners, the the standard is actually a 1/2 inch of rainfall over a impervious area for stormwater treatment, water quality treatment. Unless you're within an outstanding resource water or other critical area, then it's 1 inch. So proposing 2 inches is fairly generous from a water quality perspective.
And the only recommendation that I had that the engineer also agreed to, as put on the plan, was just that a test pit be performed and witnessed by the engineer to verify the proper groundwater separation. But a test pit has previously been done, I think, around this area. I know there's one over here. But I think they originally did some testing when they were looking for septic areas. So they know that there should be, but they'll do another one just to confirm.
Sure. Okay. Okay. Are they going to let you know when the test pit is dug?
Yes. So I
Okay.
have it, we can condition it. So yeah, are notified and a final report submitted afterwards.
Yeah, yeah, just so that, you know, if you happen to be out doing inspections or whatever, you could swing by if that worked out.
It's 2 houses over from my office, so it works
Yeah.
pretty well.
Oh, that's right, because you moved. I always forget that.
Yeah. It's a short walk.
You could walk to a window and just about see it.
Yep.
Okay. So any questions or comments from the commission? Okay, hearing none. I guess we need a motion to issue the administrative amendment as discussed.
So moved.
And is there a second?
Second?
Thank you.
Zulik,
Yes.
Barrington,
Yes.
Upton,
Yes.
Smith.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Park Central comments for the ZBA process.
Yeah, and before we get into Ben, if you don't mind, I think if Laura's willing to give us just an update from the ZBA side on kind of where they are in their hearings on both this one and 120, that would be good.
Good evening, Laura.
Hi, it's good to see you guys after what, 1.5 years of doing this. Not just lurking. So just brief updates with regards to Park Central. The next public hearing for that is November 29th. That is going to be just to discuss the covenant and traffic study. And then for 120 Turnpike, the initial public hearing is currently scheduled for December 13th at 7:00 p.m. That will be just an overview of the project, and the board is also going to be hearing a special permit application that is related to the comprehensive permit.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, happy to answer questions if you have them.
I don't have any questions on those two. Anybody else? No.
No.
Thank you for bringing us up to speed, Laura. Yeah, no, I won't ask any questions. I'm curious about something about 120, but it's not nothing conservation related, so I'll keep it to myself. So I know you put together comments for Park Central. That's been in process for a while, and it looked great. We've certainly had practice through the years on that one.
Yeah, so not much change from the last meeting. I just took out the specific references to the wetland flags. So this is something that we still have a little bit more time on, since they're still just kind of talking about traffic and non-Concom issues as of right now. So if you want to just continue to keep reviewing this, I think we have time, our next meeting in 3 weeks, to really harp down more of these. I haven't really looked more into the plans than I did when I first started putting this together. So I'll probably take another second round and see if there's anything else that stands out. But if there's any comments that anyone had in the meantime to add or change, let me know.
Thank you. Yeah, we should have Mark here also before we vote for a final letter. And for 120, similar state of affairs. Yes.
Yes, very similar.
Yeah.
Kind of making the same comments, for the most part, in terms of the highlights with the stormwater, and calling out, the analysis of certain regulations within the comprehensive permit requirements. And then kind of just consistency things about, construction entrances, erosion control types, locations, things very similar to our other comments, but just kind of more tailored to the specific contents within the 120.
Gotcha. And again, for newer members who haven't been on a comprehensive permit project yet, typically what happens is all of our local bylaws get waived. So from our perspective, stormwater management and the Southborough Wetlands bylaw get waived in their entirety. But we are, because in Massachusetts, the local commission enforces the Wetlands Protection Act, the state law, that does not get waived. So our real work comes when they file a notice of intent with us for these projects, and that's when we really get down into the weeds. And the plans that are submitted to go before a zoning board to get a comprehensive permit are generally a lot looser. And in fact, the law actually says I believe it says they're schematic in nature. But of course, when it comes time to a notice of intent, we get the detailed engineering accompanied by a drainage report and so forth, just like any other project. So we'll get to know these projects in a lot greater detail as things progress, just to let you know.
Back on the Park Central one, I think in the first hearing, town council had mentioned that they just put in a blanket waiver of the local bylaw, and he was going to make them enumerate each of those. Have they done that, or is that still something that?
I don't know if they have or not. Just my experience with comprehensive permits through the years is I appreciate his effort in doing that and asking that of them, but they're all going to get waived anyway. It's frustrating. The towns put so much work into crafting these bylaws that that work well for the town, and then it just all goes out the window. But that's the way it works.
Maybe we'll get lucky this time.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm being too cynical. Maybe we will. You're right. That would be great. So, sorry,
Laura, have they submitted any amended information? I don't think so, but.
So they have not submitted yet, but they are working on it and they plan to have it to us prior to November 29th. So it's on the way.
Thank you.
So they say.
So they say. That was the update as of yesterday. So.
And most likely would be the same request for 120 as well, because they kind of did a general request on something. So I would assume that comment would carry to both applications.
Okay. Anything further on 120 Turnpike, anybody? Okay. So moving along to 38 Presidential.
Nothing really new to discuss. They're still working on their RDA submission. We're kind of now definitely past the growing season, which plants can go in, but still kind of reminding them that a lot of things still need to be addressed, and we need to make at least some sort of path forward. So, I'm hoping probably not for the December meeting, since the deadline is on Monday, but possibly for January, having whether or not it's a full application or at least a better understanding of what they're going to be doing on mitigation, so that the commission can have that discussion and feel more comfortable on some progress to get ready for next spring.
Okay, and again, they've been very decent to work with.
Very much so.
It's sort of understandable to think it would slow down this time of year, and we'll be hopeful for a ramp up in activity, when things warm up, come March or whatever. And we'll look forward to seeing the RDA. Do you have any idea what generally they're contemplating the RDA? This is about leveling out their yard.
Yeah, so kind of spot filling a couple areas, just kind of where it dipped down right towards the wetland. There's just a couple of places that have some ankle breakers and holes. And then putting a play structure off to I think the right side of the house. So just they want to ensure that they include the mitigation for that as well as the violation. So they're just trying to come up with more of a holistic plan in areas, that if they did a give back of a certain area let it to regrow and untouched moving forward of where that would be and what that would look like.
Perfect. Okay, moving along, 84 Main Street, the amending the covenant. So they're still in process, getting the survey information together and.
Yep, but they did respond after our last comment with our kind of comments that we had at the meeting about not including some of that generator building and making sure the things like the gazebo and the bridge, etc., are included. So they did verify that they will do so and work on those additional requests while the surveyor is finishing up their plans.
Great, great. So that too is moving along. Chestnut Hill Farm Management Plan. So you were kind enough to forward along to me, because I was the one who raised the issue about just fleshing out the last piece of the farm management plan, talking about the livestock. They put together some language that looked like it absolutely covered the that last hole in the farm management plan. To me, it looked great, and obviously when they come in, they'll be presenting the whole thing to the commission as a whole.
Yes.
Any updates beyond that?
No, not really. And I think the talk about the herd size. So there's kind of a uniform measurement of
animal units.
Animal units. So it's 20 animal units could be different for each type of animal because some are smaller, some are larger. So it's not necessarily 20 sheep is 20 animal units. Maybe 5 sheep is in a unit, etc. So they've come up with kind of a general unit that would not restrict them, but allow them enough flexibility because herd sizes do change year to year. So it seemed a pretty consistent and universal measurement as well. So just kind of keeping in line with what they need to do, but at the request of the commission, it's not an astronomical number either. It's not, so high that they'll never meet it. So.
Right. No, just to your point, it seemed this is a farm management plan, and it seemed entirely appropriate that the current agricultural terminology ought to be used in addressing this stuff. It made sense. So I look forward to hearing more about it when they come to present it. Let's see. So the standard conditions, review of our standard conditions. I've been slowly pawing through them on the Dropbox account. Thank you for gathering all that stuff and collating it. I was surprised with the level of detail that Hopenden gets into, breaking it out by project types and so forth.
Yeah, and if it makes it any easier to digest, I know that kind of looking at it, I had ended up printing out all the town special conditions, going through each one, highlighting the ones that at least were, different than ours or important, indifferent. So what I started to do that I uploaded to the Dropbox today is started to pick out some of those kind of what I would call more basic conditions. So not overly extreme, not overly restrictive, but things that I think would be universally kind of accepted to be putting in to our standards. So if that's something, you wanted to look at in the meantime, I can continue to kind of pick out here and there. And even, if we wanted me to make a list from town to town, but I think kind of inserting them slowly but surely into the special conditions, and that way it gives you guys kind of maybe 5 or at most 10 conditions to consider instead of looking sheet from sheet from sheet from sheet. I mean, like, do we have that, do we not? So take a look at that. I'll continue to kind of whittle away at it, but some initial feedback on whether it's tonight or for the next meeting, I think would be good as a kind of maybe an easier start.
That's great, because it is a lot of information as you start flowing into it.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yep. And you forget which town you're looking at if you've already read it before. It gets confusing. So I've at least tried to pick out the simple ones and put them in the correct sections. And then I think my goal is, as I read through our standard conditions over and over and over again too, it's because it's things that we don't always consistently read, the whole thing. It's kind of one of those things we take for granted, and they're always going to be there. So as I've kind of read through them again and again recently, there's definitely some things that we can update or merge together to make it a little bit more readable for some of our, applicants that maybe aren't engineers that are getting these so that they can understand them. Not to take away from the validity of any of the conditions, but there are definitely some that are a little bit redundant, that mean the same thing but are worded different, that can be put together and just cleaned up just a smidge. So, but I think that will be final step so that we don't have both new conditions and random edits kind of going on at the same time. So it doesn't look like we're deleting a bunch of things when really it's just merged. So first tracking all new conditions and then looking at it, as a start from then, and then kind of doing the final update of the document as a whole.
Thank you very much for all the work you're putting into it.
It's been interesting. I mean, we're definitely better off than some towns, which was nice to know.
Oh, no question, no question. Better off in many ways. I gotta say, we're not overly draconian. We're fairly straightforward. I think we're in a good place, but it's great looking around at other towns to see if there are any little things that we can add in to make it better. So fiscal year 25 budget. You want to walk us through?
Sure. If you want, I can share my screen, but otherwise it's very much the same as the previous years. We've kind of agreed that we wouldn't increase stewardship for at least a couple because we did quite a few bigger jumps. So that budget is going to remain at 35,000, which is much better than I think the 5 years ago that was there when I started. So we've made some good changes. The one kind of major change, but isn't very major within the budget, was just that we don't need a recording clerk any longer because we have Laura as part-time staff. So I took that $3,100 and took some of it, not all, I think about half to 2,000 of it, and increased employee training, and I increased our dues and membership, so that both you guys and us in the office can take some more classes if we want. And I'm also a part of the floodplain managers groups now, so paying those dues and things like that. So that's really the only change that we have. Our budget went down a little bit because of just the loss of the recording clerk. So our total kind of percent increase, including salary, is only 3, which will pretty much be fine. So
great. Yeah, I think I have a suspicion we're going to be heading into a little bit tougher than usual town meeting, and not showing a big increase, I think, is a great place for us to be.
Yeah, and our salary items, we went down 6.5. So it's really just the personnel board is still kind of changing the grades and fixing those. So that is really just where the increases came from with salary.
Okay. So do we need a vote on this?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Yep.
Oh, and this is going into the budget warrant article. Okay. Yep. Any questions or comments from the commission? Would it help to pull the spreadsheet up to take a quick look at it?
Sure.
We can certainly do that.
So it also has kind of what we actually used in the last couple years as kind of a reference to show. So this is the FY25 requests. So it's mostly the salary item, and then got rid of this recording clerk.
Yep.
And so our overall is down 6.5 minus salary.
Great. So we need to vote to approve this so it can get incorporated into the appropriate warrant article. So we're funded for next year. Would somebody like to make a motion?
So moved.
And is there a second?
Second.
Thank you.
Zulik?
Yes.
Barrington?
Yes.
Upton?
Yes.
Smith?
Yes. Okay. Our calendar and deadlines.
Yeah, so we don't have to officially, vote on anything. But this is kind of our standard format for meeting dates and deadlines. We used to have 2 columns. One was stormwater deadlines and one was wetlands deadlines. And since we amended the stormwater bylaw to have it in the paper only once to be consistent with our wetlands applications, we only have now one deadline, which makes it easier for everyone. So, you know, our first meeting date would be January 4th, and then every 3 weeks from then. You know, we checked, I made sure it wasn't Memorial Day is early this year, so that doesn't affect that at all. And there isn't any other holidays besides these ones listed.
Great.
So I'll put this up on the website, and I will in our Dropbox too, so you always can see our meeting schedule for the year.
Great. Thank you very much. And you are up next.
All right. So 10 Overlook, as a reminder from last time, that's the one that started without doing anything. So they have gotten their order recorded. They have a DEP sign up, but they failed their erosion control inspection. The silt fence was not installed properly. I could just kick my foot under. It was pretty easy. So, you know, they did have a straw wattle there, but if they're utilizing those erosion controls, and they need to be installed correctly. So they need to fix it and give me a call to re-inspect before they get started. 5 Corderville that we talked about a little bit earlier, they'll be starting soon. They did their construction entrance, erosion controls, you know, all their pre-construction items are addressed. They were just waiting for this minor modification and their building permit, which they now have. And then for the dump, we extended the deadline for the bids until Tuesday at noon. We had 28 people request bid docs, so very excited. You know, at least a handful of them said that they were interested in submitting a bid, and they were preparing it. So hopeful that on Tuesday we'll at least have. I'll be happy if we get 5. I'll be really excited to look at. So you have to do like a public bid opening. So at noon on Tuesday, if anyone's really curious, feel free to come down to 9 Corderville Road. Myself and Melanie in the select board office will be opening those. And then they will have electronic copies, so I'll send those to you once I can. And we're going to have TRC Taylor, who's helping us with the dump documents, also review them to help us choose a contractor, which ultimately will fall to, you know, a incoming select board meeting to choose that and get the ball rolling. We did get the extension deadline from DEP. So our deadline to hire a contractor is January, and our deadline to start is March. So hopefully that our weather holds out decent enough that we can get this started before then, and then it has to be completed within 6 months. So we're in a good roll. We've been keeping DEP updated. They're happy with the progress since they thankfully issued the amendment as well, since we've been keeping them in the loop. So all is hopeful on that end, and hopefully I have a nice update as to start dates and hopefully chosen contractors by the time we meet in 3 weeks.
Yeah.
That would be nice.
Fantastic. Fantastic.
Um,
So holiday office
Yes.
closures.
Yep. So next Wednesday and Thursday and Friday, we will be closed. All town offices are closed Thursday and Friday, but I'm going to take the day on Wednesday. And then the week between Christmas and New Year's, both Laura and I will be off. So what I usually do is I post a news flash on the website, you know, set my email, etc. It's usually dead quiet. I'm lucky if I come back with a voicemail, but you know, if there's any questions or concerns, let me know. But I'll be sure to post it as much as possible so people are aware. And I usually send an email out to our frequent flyers as well, our engineers and such, so that they know, you know, in case they need something.
Perfect.
And also quickly before we do decisions, I just wanted to verify, the DPW director asked me, so the Willow Street culvert is something that has come up a couple times. You know, it has failed. They have plates over it right now. So they just want to verify that it is still okay with the commission if they conduct a test pit. So it would be an excavator from Willow Street, so no equipment in the resource area, and is very much basically equivalent to what they had been doing, just removing the sediment that had blown out during some of the storms. If anything, a little bit least impactful, because they'll be kind of just trying to find the top the culvert right off the side of the road. So just wanted to verify with you, you know, they're willing to file something if they need to, but this is just to try and find the culvert to do some design plans, so that they can finally get this fixed.
And subsequent to getting the plans together, they'll come to us for a notice of intent for actually doing, yeah. So if there is anything that needs to be addressed, it can be addressed during that time.
Mhm.
Are folks generally okay with that? Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
See some heads nodding. Okay. So we can tell him that sounds like a plan.
Okay, and I'll do the standard, you know, I usually have them notify me when they have it scheduled to do it and when they're out there. So, you know, we kind of know what's going on. So I'll be sure to let him know that too.
Perfect. All right, so first up, we have 78 Main. Excuse me, no, we don't. We have Northborough Road.
Northborough Road. So we had 2 conditions on that, about the notification about alternative construction techniques if the culverts aren't on a sufficient depth, and to remove the old silt fence in the area of the existing culvert. And the findings of fact we'll discuss about the waiver granting, because it's in previously degraded areas and within the right of way, the paved right of way.
Yeah. Perfect. Any changes to that?
It sounded like they weren't sure about the removing the fence. Should we make that best effort or just make them do it?
I think if we condition, it's a really minor ask. If literally just if they can just get it from across the water course, because the silt fence, it just doesn't degrade, and if it washes up against a culvert, it can cause, it can cause flooding. I would be shocked if there was any pushback from them.
Okay.
Is there a motion to issue the order of conditions as discussed?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
Thank you.
Zulik,
Yes.
Barrington,
Yes.
Upton,
Yes.
Smith.
Yes.
Okay.
All right, so St. Mark's parking lot is next.
Yes, and the only extra condition I had was the submittal of a construction schedule prior to construction to the agent.
Oh, yeah. Yep. And yeah, there was nothing else on that.
I know they had the signs about snow storage. Should we put something about, no storing snow?
Oh, in the rain garden. Did they propose signage?
Yeah, so we can
couple
make it as
times,
like
but-
a finding of the, that they have to be installed per the plan.
Okay.
Sure.
Does that make sense? Okay. So it's a condition, but a finding in the same thing. Covers all the bases.
All right, if there are no other changes, would somebody like to make a motion?
So moved.
In a second.
Second.
Thank you.
Zulik,
Yes.
Barrington,
Yes.
Upton,
Yes.
Smith.
Yes.
Okay.
And we're gonna have a bunch for 250 Turnpike.
Yes, so for the SMP, I'll do that one first because that might be a little bit simpler. It's mostly just the finding of fact about the drainage calculations and the use of the offsite basins, because the watershed areas are not impacted. So I would just put that in as a finding, just kind of taken right from Fuss and O'Neill's comment letter and plugged in. I don't think there was anything else specific on stormwater that I captured in the sign.
I think if we could get the phrase no adverse impact to the wetlands within the off-site drainage structures.
Okay.
That's I think what allows this to go forward, and that's something that's come up on other projects where there is an adverse impact, where they hadn't treated the stormwater, for instance, and we've had to turn a project down. So does anyone else have any changes or amendments? stormwater management permit. Okay, is there a motion to issue the stormwater management permit conditioned as discussed?
Moved.
In a second?
Second.
Thank you.
Zulik,
Yes.
Barrington,
Yes.
Upton,
Yes.
Smith.
Yes.
Okay. And then for the order, you know, it was more kind of just outlining the conditions within the invasive species management plan. So the 75% success rate, at least 2 years of monitoring reports after removal. I had like a notification prior to the beginning of each phase. You know, I think that was kind of important because they were treating, you know, different invasives kind of differently and timing it during different phases of construction. So just keeping us in the loop. In other permits, we have required the kind of name and information of the professional who will be conducting the work. And then for work, including pesticides, a licensed applicator has to be the one shall be used, and that information gets submitted to us. Restrictions about the maintenance within the basins and that time frame for the vernal pool season. And then just kind of, you know, what I usually do in terms of a finding of fact is the important kind of keys within that invasive management plan that I talked about. Any restrictions that they've called out in their plan for times. And if there was any other notification areas of when, if you wanted to be notified when they were going to be cleaning the basins as well. If that's something that you guys wanted.
I think it's very important that they let you know when the basins are being cleaned. Yeah, that's going to be some delicate work. And again, so that if it happens to coincide when you're doing your rounds, you could stop in and make sure I think their proposed you know, method of protecting the area if they have to use the heavier equipment makes a lot of sense, as long as they stick to that.
I didn't have anything else noted. Joe, do you have any other things that I missed? No?
No, I think that covers it pretty well, Melissa.
Okay, thank you. All right.
Yeah.
And then and I'll put the findings in there about work, you know, within a resource area, and then the 20-foot as they're, you know, just maintaining existing structures, not causing permanent impacts, you know, to resource areas. Joe, did you have something? Sorry. Did I cut you off? No, okay.
And anybody else? So we need, this is for the order of conditions under the Wetlands Protection Act.
Mm-hmm. And bylaw, but yes.
And bylaw, okay, we can do them at the same time. Is there a motion to issue orders under the State Wetlands Protection Act and local wetlands bylaw as discussed?
Moved.
And a second?
Second.
Thank you.
Zulik,
Yes.
Carrington,
Yes.
Upton,
Yes.
Smith.
Yes.
Okay.
All right. I think that's everything. Did I miss anything, Melissa?
Not that I know of.
All right. So we need one last motion, and I always forget that as chair I can make motions, so I'll do this one. Motion to adjourn. Is there a second?
So moved.
Zulik,
Yes.
Barrington,
Yes.
Upton,
Yes.
Smith.
Yes. All right. Thank you very much, everybody, and have a great Thanksgiving.
Yep.
Yeah, you too.
Happy Thanksgiving, everyone.
You
Yep.
too.
Happy Thanksgiving.
You too. And have a great night, everyone.
Night.
Bye.